Well, Ini, I'd like to say you're welcome, and no one can say that you didn't do anything for them, especially with the warning of the IG that they're going to be enforcing the third-party insurance policy from the 1st of February. So, Ini has been doing some work trying to educate Nigerians on the importance of getting their third-party insurance. But we are looking at something else. We're looking at the category of people who certainly might be impacted by this, by the new policy of the United States, or will I say the shift in policy with regards to the USAID, that's the United States Agency for International Development. But it does appear that there has been some reassurances given. The question is whether it is clear. I mean, the United States, through its agency, the USAID, has been supporting, a number of communities through its donor funding programs, one of which is for people living with HIV/AIDS in different parts of the world, Nigeria inclusive. So this morning, we're going to be speaking with Mr. Abdulkadir Ibrahim, who is the National Coordinator of NEP1. NEP1 is an acronym for the Network of People Living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria. It is the umbrella body of over 1,000 support groups of people living with HIV in Nigeria. Mr. Abdulkadir Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
Well, this is where we are right now. There was a lot of uncertainty in the air with regards to what was going to happen to funding for critical groups, such as people living with HIV, and what was going to happen to the support that they got through counseling, through the antiretroviral drugs, etc., etc. But it does appear that the U.S. has, through its U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has now said that, well, for these critical areas, they will continue support, whilst they also walk through their issues with the USAID. Have you found this reassuring?
Yes, we found it reassuring. In fact, we have received that formal communications through the PEPFAR agencies and their implementing partners, and some of our community service providers have begun to continue or resume their normal work, even though still with limited restriction in terms of the overall services. But the waiver clearly stated some programs that have been waived, especially treatment. They are very clear about treatment and also prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV infection, including prevention for breastfeeding mothers.
So have you been able to get that message across to all of your members who might have been apprehensive about this development?
Yes, even prior to the waiver, we have already communicated to our state chapters across the country, and also to reach out to some of our support group members whom they are within the category, and also to reach out to our ad hoc workers who have been asked to post their work. But basically, everybody is informed, and in country, there have been an ongoing discussion, especially through some government agencies like the National Agency for the Control of AIDS. NACA has been the first to convey an emergency meeting where we discuss and also provide some basic feedback, and they also gave us the assurances of the government. Then later on, the coordinating minister through CCM. CCM is country coordinating mechanism, where he convey all the executive escorts, which I am part of the board, and where he assured us of the government commitment. And I'm pretty sure that you have seen the recent release last week of the government commitment, just to ensure that there is no disruption of HIV services within the 90-day period that the U.S. government has provided.
So I'm just looking at the fact that some people have now started saying that there are lessons that we ought to learn from this, will I say, little upset, so to speak. So that it would seem that in certain areas we have become too reliant on donor agencies and the work that they do. That yes, we should be grateful that they do it, but we shouldn't see it as a right and abdicate our own responsibility in that regard. Has there been any support that your organizations like yourself and, you know, the people living with HIV, has there been any support that they get directly from government?
So basically, our work is in partnership with government because we are product of the government. Then in this regard, I can say that, yes, it is a pity that about 90% of HIV treatments or program generally in Nigeria is through foreign aid. But prior to this period, as a country, we have been working so hard to ensure that we keep informing our government through different channels to see that this thing, in fact, even within the global health system, a lot of changes are happening. And as a country, we need to really start thinking on how to own our program, because HIV is no longer that serious matter because there is treatment available. And with the quality of ARV drugs that we have now, within 3 months, somebody who is infected and if placed on treatment will be able to achieve viral suppression. And even if you test, you can't even find HIV infection in that person's body. So it is an opportunity for us to begin to see how are we as a country take ownership of this. I know NACA and the Ministry of Health through NASCAP have been making effort to do that, but I think it is a wake-up call for us, because total dependence is really unacceptable for us as a country, because we have about 1.9 million people who are currently receiving the life savings antiretroviral therapy, which about 1.5 of this number is receiving support from the US government directly. So you could see that we have a huge gap and a long way to go as a country. But the beauty of this is that the current government has demonstrated willingness and capacity to really show that, yes, we can always be there to safeguard the life of our people, because the recent fake approval to us is a welcome development, and we are happy with that, and we look forward to seeing how government will move away from purchasing some of these drugs and bring it down to the country level, where we can be able to manufacture these commodities, with the view that in the event something like this happened. We had during COVID, and this is the second example, because when the announcement was made, everything was shut down. You can't go to facility, you can't access any commodity until later on, through internal discussions, and majority of the implementing partners are local NGOs, and already there have been distribution of some of these commodities to hospital, and you can't disrupt that because we are not answerable to American government. But many of the IPs and their agencies have been paused, and we are just working based on it. But now, what we need to do as a country is not to fight, because it is a privilege that the US government is giving to us. So for us as Nigerians and as the community of people living with HIV, all we have to say is to thank the US government. And I want to correct an impression also, and the news that has been going out. The overall HIV funding is not domiciled within the USAID. So USAID as a body on its own is meant to address multiple development issues, which diseases like HIV is one of them. And in country, in Nigeria, is an agency under PEPFAR. It is a program under the Presidential Plan for International AIDS Relief. That's PEPFAR. And they have 2 or 3 major agencies. We have the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and we have DOD, the Department of Defense, which address HIV within the military. And we also have the USAID, which is also another agency that also receive funding from PEPFAR. Am I communicating? Where they provide services through their local implementing partners in the country.
So USAID was just one of them?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So while that has been cleared up now, I'm just a little, have there been challenges, you've just talked about how, people have been able to get their drugs, but we still hear from time to time that there are hiccups. You talked about COVID, how there was hiccups, but I have also heard from, before now, how sometimes, even though some of these drugs are supposed to be free, people still have to pay for them. Have you heard such complaints?
So in crises like this, I need to tell you the truth. People take advantages because antiretroviral therapy is being offered free of charge. But because of this crisis, some, they are due for their appointment. And when they get into the facility, for example, we have a community site where key population access services, majority or if not all, have been shut down because as is the waiver, the announcement that the US, but there are people who are not within the category of those communities, and whatever, irrespective of your diversity or sexual orientation, all we want is to ensure that everybody is on treatment and they should have access to the life-saving medication, and that is the goal. So for that reason, I don't think it is appropriate for somebody to sell, and just like I have said, it is free of charge. And the government is also making effort to make this thing available. But I know people within the community and some healthcare workers who may want to take advantage of this happening, because through our regular calls in Lagos, I can specifically mention LASU as the name of a facility where, as at last week, there is no drugs, and from the feedback we are getting, even though we don't want to be putting that on the table, but these are some of the realities. People will be forced to go and buy some of this either at the community pharmacy. So it's becoming a business venture for some group of people, but I think we need to quickly find a way to tackle that. And I think with what we have, with the waiver that has been granted to the US government and the effort of the government, I don't think there is a cause for alarm. It's just for us to see how are we going to integrate this, and then as government and the people of Nigeria, how are we going to come up with our strategic plans to see how this HIV could be integrated into our health system. And I'm happy with this period. As NEP1, what we just did to support the government is to quickly do a short mapping of the ad hoc staff who are providing these services to people living with HIV and others who are receiving HIV services, because it's not necessarily you have to live with HIV, because we are doing prevention. People have to have access to these preventive measures such as PrEP, condom, counseling, family planning facilities are all available for people to have access to. So all these things were being disrupted. So what we did was to quickly do a rough analysis, and initially we had about 28,000 people who have been engaged by the US government through their IPs that are working under these agencies, such as the USAID and CDC and DOD. So we were able to map out about 24,368 workers whom we have identified who has lost their job due to this thing. So, but as a country, the Honorable Coordinating Minister is really working hard to ensure that some of this group of people are being absorbed within the government system as part of the sustainability of the program, because I think it's good. What Trump did is really good for us, because it has really made God to prioritize some of these things. And the coordinating minister has taken it upon to himself, because in the wide sector approach, in the health reform program that the government is doing, all these things have been mapped out, and they are now integrating HIV, TB, and malaria, because these are the three major diseases that receive foreign aid. And it's not only from the US government. We also receive support from the Global Fund. And I think they are also another group of partners that we really need to put on the table, because they are investing huge amount of money into this country.
Well, let me go to my colleague Ayo, who has questions for you.
Well, thank you, Maokwe. My first question is just to ask you, Mr. Ibrahim, Did you see this coming? Secondly, I mean, if you can take the two together, was the federal government supposed to be a counterpart funder of the projects, the initiatives that the U.S. is defunding now?
Okay, actually, I can say that I did not see this coming, but as part of the sustainability move, it is not a surprise because we already know that anything can happen. Because prior to this, the U.S. ambassador coordinating the global health, security, and diplomacy has came to Nigeria, and they have briefed us about some of these possibilities and the need for us to start putting our hearts in order as a country. And so for that, I don't think it's a surprise. So it is something that may likely happen. So, but regarding the counterpart you talked about, usually as a country, we don't need to enter into any contractual agreements with the US. The US program is a support. They donate and provide service not only in Nigeria but to the overall world to achieve global health security. However, there are other programs that Nigeria is paying counterpart, just like the Global Fund.
All right, just a quick one again before the program comes to an end. You said something the other time that we're hoping one way or the other at some point to become self-dependent. The question is how. A good number of the significant ingredients for making some of these medicines that we use, both intravenous and all, they come from abroad. Do you see the potential in country for us to become self-dependent on such issues?
Yes, Nigeria have this manpower, and we also have the resources. It is the political will that we just need. Today, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can decide to say that as government, we are taking responsibility of our people. Remember what is happening in South Africa. These are the kind of challenges we really want to see. And just like I have said, local manufacturing, I think, is the best way to go, and to see how, as a country, we integrate HIV into our health insurance program, and then begin to look for other domestic resource mobilization to take that.
I want to know if, going forward, there's anything that you want your members to either take note of or you would like to also keep the Nigerian government aware of.
So what I would just tell our members is to continue to remain focused. This is a challenge that we can't just exonerate ourselves. As leaders, as people living with HIV, we also need to take responsibility and also contribute to the government agenda, because ultimately somebody is paying for these commodities, because it's the taxpayers' money. And today the US government is saying that we are putting our people first. So I think it is important for us to also begin to strategize and think and work closely with our government. And me, I'm happy that the government is responsive and is showing commitment and willingness to address this matter.
Well, Mr. Abdul Qadir Ibrahim, we have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. We wish you and your members well. He's the national coordinator of NEP1, who is the network of people living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria, and is the umbrella body of over 1,000 support groups of people living with HIV in Nigeria. Thank you once more for coming on the program.
Welcome.